love, peace, happiness, contentment. Virtues make our life better. Let us ponder on our virtues. Virtues for life.
Hello and welcome to Virtues for Life. I am Sister Denise, and this program is a conversation between Brahma Kumaris and Kumaris about virtues. Virtues, values, qualities and powers are the foundation of our life, and these are the things that determine what kind of people we are and the contribution we make to society. The laws of spirituality have told us that the principal way in which we can be a catalyst for global positive change is by the work that we do on ourselves to develop our characters, to develop our virtues. Today in the studio with me I have Zimrian from London. Welcome to Virtues for Life.
Thank you.
Jim is an educator. He lives and works in London. He has also worked as a management consultant and trainer, and he has been practicing Rajyoga for the past 37 years. Today, the program is looking at the virtue of acceptance. So acceptance perhaps is one of the most difficult ones to arrive at. What would you say?
Very much so. Because there's all different types of acceptance, non-acceptance, isn't it? Our world is full of schisms, divisions, segregations, all about this aspect of acceptance and non-acceptance.
So we have to accept each other, we have to accept situations, we have to accept our limitations. What has been your journey on the road to acceptance?
I think for me, spirituality is really about this. It's about universal acceptance. I tried to grasp this thing about acceptance before I came. I started the search, the spiritual search, and I couldn't get my head around it because there were so many different sort of variables and different aspects, and I got lost in this maze of divisions and subdivisions and everything. And spirituality immediately just brought me back into this aspect of oneness.
So what do you mean by oneness?
Well, that everything in a way has its own place. Everything is unified, and I love this aspect of that everything has its truth and everything has its place. Everything is right. Do you know, I just remember the story. It's like a little story. I just remembered it now, actually. There was two followers, and they were arguing about what is truth. And one said, well, truth really is about following the laws, the disciplines, doing the right thing as it should be and as we know it to be. And the other one said, no, you don't understand. Truth is about following your heart, your intuition. It's about opening yourself up to creativity and then living your life. And they both couldn't agree on this. They said, the only way we're going to decide on this is we must go to the great master. So they went to the great master and they told him the quandary. And they said, but master, isn't it? Truth is really about following the laws, the disciplines, and doing the right thing in the right way. And he said, and he stroked his long white beard, and he said, you're absolutely right. And the other one was shocked that his beloved master should say such a thing. And he said, but master, it surely can't be like this. It must be about our heart and intuition. And the great master stood back and cast his beautiful, powerful eyes and said, you're absolutely right as well. Now there was a third follower sitting beside him and said, but master, they both can't be right. And he said, you're absolutely right as well. So in a way, the moral of the story being that, everyone has their own truth. Everyone sees it from their own perspective, and everybody is right. There is this, and this.
But you're also saying that these different positions are complementary and not exclusive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So perhaps acceptance is, or for us to get a key to acceptance, is that all these perspectives are right in their own way, but we have to get them to complement each other.
Yeah, I think it's in a way, I suppose, I don't know, analogy maybe of a jigsaw puzzle, that, you know, that we have that we're all part of a great universal jigsaw, and all we're doing is sometimes seeing it in disjointed, fragmented pieces. But when we begin to accept each piece in their own right, and we can place it within the jigsaw of the great play of life, then maybe we can see the complementarity. Even though each piece is different, each piece has a different shape, it fits in with the next shape.
Now,
So
you must have experienced not being accepted, because you're very idiosyncratic and individualistic.
that is very perceptive of you and very true. But in a way, I suppose it was my own belief in my own self. I mean, going back to acceptance, there had always been a very deep acceptance of who I am and my own role and my own, in a way, my own mission. I knew what I wanted to do, and even though maybe I couldn't articulate it so well, or maybe other people couldn't grasp my articulation, even though I felt it was clear, I still felt what I had to do and the way I had to go was correct. And so maintaining that.
Do you think the non-acceptance is sometimes more misunderstanding?
I think totally right.
Or not really seeing what's in front?
It's about not understanding. It's not understanding that everything has its part in the great schema of things.
So would you say that in order for us to attain the stage of acceptance, we have to really work on our understanding and maybe move out of the blinkered limitations of a limited understanding?
Yeah, I mean, I think non-acceptance means lack of love. When there is non-acceptance, there is no love, because you're fighting, you're battling, you're rejecting, you're discriminating, and so on.
So why do people hate?
That's a great question. Why do people? Because they don't understand. There isn't this empathic compassion for another's part. I mean, and then I was thinking about this another day. I mean, can I share an analogy? I was thinking yesterday about this, connected with something else, and it was a bit like, it's trying to understand that each of us are travelling on the great river of life, through time and space, and then we see some ships travelling on the ship, very beautiful sails full of rigging, and we say, oh, and that's a very beautiful ship, and we accept it. It's very beautiful because it adds to the kudos, and I can associate with it, blah blah.
Well, but then it fulfills certain norms.
It fulfills certain norms, absolutely right. The norms of society says that you have all this, but then we see other ships travelling on the great sea of life, that the rigging is disbanded, it's been through a lot of storms, it's limping along without any direction, without any rudder, any motive power. And in a way, that's having an understanding of what's happened, that these souls have been through experiences, and all they need is a haven, a harbour where they need some kind of reconciliation, some kind of healing, some kind of refitting of their life. And so it's in a way acceptance of this understanding that all things are all right in the great schema of life. And so in a way, these are the two types of norms that we see within society.
Do you think one of our problems is what somebody has called the looking good syndrome?
Yeah.
If it looks good, it is good. If it doesn't look good, then it's not acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of this whole programming, that when the whole problems, we were talking earlier about young children and young adults, is that the media has really brainwashed people into certain norms of thinking, attitude, behaviour, and so on. And if you don't comply to that, you have to try and comply to it. And therefore there is non-acceptance of themselves as they are, but they have to try and fit in to this kind of, blueprint that society says should be.
Now, we're facing a global economic serious downturn, which means that people are going to have to accept less comforts, less technical devices, less
oh heavens,
status.
how can we survive it?
Now, how are we going to accept to have to live at a lower standard of material benefit than we have had? Because this is a big thing to accept.
It is, and I wouldn't dream to say it's an easy question to answer. But I think as it comes back to is, what do you need, and what's the thing that sustains your life? And I think.
So what sustains your life?
I think truth. living by my truth, living by the code of spiritual conduct that I feel gives me that sustenance.
How would you describe that code?
Which is my code of spiritual life really is about benevolence, actually. It's about giving. That when I give, I receive, and this is the nurture that the heart receives by giving good wishes, good feelings, by inclusivity with others, bringing whatever I have, I share that.
So really, you're talking about the philosophy of karma.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Is this the key to your life? The laws of karma?
Yeah, I think it is. I think rather, in a way, karma is a kind of philosophical kind of coda. But I think in a way that going back to love is a much more, I think, conducive term that we can ride with. That love is this is about acceptance. When I accept that each one's playing their own part, whatever way they're doing it, then I accept that there is love. When I accept that what is happening in the world is correct according to the great scheme of the play,
so when you
love.
see people being unkind, being violent to each other, and you are not able to do anything about it, how do you arrive at a state of acceptance?
We see so much, don't we? We become inured to it. But it's through understanding. It's because the individuals are hurt. These are aspects of each individual calling out to try and discover and recall their own love, their own truth, calling out to integrate. But I would say that I feel I can help them, that through my meditation. And I spend a lot of my own reflectivity and my own time, in a way, working with vibrational energy.
Tell me how that works.
I'm not sure really, but in a way, it's connecting with God's great causal energy, connecting with God's great power on that subtle level. And as we begin to connect and detach ourselves from, say, the chaotic energy fields, we can then connect with God's great energy field, and we can then create a kind of harmonic resonance with other fields. We can send, you could say, calming, healing energies to those fields that are disruptive, where individuals are in turmoil or torment or in confusion. And somehow this benevolent energy, which is coming from our love heart, will give them some form of hope and some form of feeling that there is a way forward.
People sometimes feel that God is responsible for the acts of God that we see, natural calamities, different kinds of human suffering, and they find it very unacceptable, and it turns people actually away from that source. What would you say to a person so that they could start to have a more accepting feeling about these things?
Yeah, I think this is a very common effect now, that people blame God for all these, especially in religious communities. I would try to undersay that it was those people who've interpreted the philosophical or the scriptural positions that have been the tenets of their lives, and it's the interpretation of that and how it's been implemented that has caused many effects. But to talk about their own truth, them to think about God as a loving individual, maybe them just to think about, first of all, let's go back to themselves, think about what's within their own heart, their own love, and then think about God's love that asks them to think about, would God's pure love ever cause any pain or any hurt or any form of sorrow within their lives? And I think when you can have a rational discussion on a simple level, talking about the nature of God, I think people can then begin to somehow feel God's great benevolence.
There are people who've had really bad things happen to themselves, or they've done really bad things, and they find it really impossible to accept what's happened to them, just deal with the trauma or even of something bad that they have done. How does a person shift out of that?
That's a really difficult question, I think, because it's almost like they're in a cocoon of darkness in that particular way. And I think that individual needs a lot of support, and especially help of others around them, of positivity first of all. It's almost leading somebody out of a room. They're in a room, all the lights are all gone, and they can't see anything. And of course there isn't any you can't see the way to exit. And I think maybe in a way that if one is brave enough, one could go into the room and actually help that individual through one's own subtle good wishes and powerful thoughts, will then give that soul individual support and strength to move away from that.
When you talk about bravery, why do you need to be brave to go in there?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? Because many of the things that you deal with and connect with trigger your own fears and your own demons, and the things that maybe you haven't totally reconciled yourself. And sometimes you're facing partly your own demons when you're dealing with these particular issues. They have connotations with all the things that the society have filled us with, all the kind of demonic and all the different reactive experiences that media has pumped into us, and so we associate that with these particular states, and so we have to kind of almost transcend them and to connect ourselves with God's light, and that gives us the illumination and the power and the strength to, in a way, to occlude all these effects and to give that strength to the individual.
What if a person doesn't accept God?
Okay, that's fine. I think this is a very common trait, especially.
But then what does a person do? They don't accept God, they don't accept the situation. It seems a very catch-22 situation.
Yeah, I think in a way that maybe there could be some kind of faith in say, if I had a connection with that person, maybe have some faith in me, in my truth, in my good wishes, in my feelings, my compassion, my empathy, which in a way I believe will trigger a similar empathic, synchronistic experience within the other person, and it's like they begin to see the light. The psychic negative cloud that's totally enshrouded them can be lifted, and they can begin to see aspects of light. And I think that's a very slow process. I mean, I think it's a very difficult process. I've had many experiences of trying, hopefully, to help people, but it's never an easy process. Especially when they're in a state of hopelessness.
Yeah. So what about injustice? There are many people who suffer from injustice and they really can't find a way to actually have a decent life because of accumulated injustice, which is very difficult to accept.
How do I view it, or how do I help them?
Well, how do you feel about it?
Well, going back to that term you used before, I understand this is a result of past effects, that there are many karma, that many people are in the world today are in certain situations that they found themselves locked in the jail of that circumstantial situation.
Then it becomes another question that to accept the reality of the laws of karma, because the laws of karma say, if you've done something, you're going to have to suffer the consequences, and you have to accept that.
I think there's two things, isn't there? There's the effect and there's the suffering. I think there's two different things. That you could be, say for example, you could be in very severe weather. The weather is very severe, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to suffer because of the weather. I can deal with it.
Suffering is really optional. Pain is mandatory.
Yeah, very well put. Absolutely. And I think it's really helping each individual to understand. It's going back to what you were talking about earlier. It's really clear about awareness and understanding. And this really will help them to negotiate their way out of the circumstance and the situation. There are many people, you hear great, incredible stories, people in concentration camps. Incredible. Yet they had lives of love and selflessness and for others, and they were beacons of light within that horror. And I think in today's world we have to face it with that same aspect, going back to love and faith.
So where does a person learn this kind of understanding?
I don't think you do learn it. I think it's intrinsically part of each one's spiritual personality.
So your makeup, you're either made that way or not.
I think we're there. It's within everybody, but it's overridden. It's kind of covered over through influences, through past effects. In a way, it's all we do, and this is how I see spirituality, is just reviving the butterfly of the beautiful self, that's been hidden. And if we can revive, and I think we can do this. We don't need to go anywhere. We need to just through a meditation, through vibrations, we can really begin to activate the beauty within each other, send it through very powerful, subtle vibrational energy.
Very beautiful. So I think we're just about at the end of our time, and I'd like to thank you very much for your insights, that beautiful, loving self in that dark cocoon that has to be awakened again. This has been a conversation about acceptance on Virtues for Life, and with me has been Zimrian, an educator from England. Let us ponder our lives for a moment, because each and every one of us has elements that we need to come to terms with and accept in order to be able to move on. Taking time, mornings, evenings, creating quiet space to sit with different virtues, powers, qualities, values is very important for our inner nurturing. And acceptance is probably one of the vast topics for each one of us to contemplate on and really try to make part of our individual natures. So thank you all for being with us for this conversation on Virtues for Life about acceptance. I look forward to seeing you all very soon. Om Shanti.